Welcome, everyone, to another episode of People, Their Passion and Purpose. This morning, I am with Danielle Levy. She is a holistic health practitioner. I'm so excited to hear about what you do, why you do it, how you started, and your passion for all of
Yeah.
that holistic health.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
how are you doing today?
I'm doing so well. I'm happy to be speaking with you.
Good.
I love talking about holistic health, especially with someone like yourself who's also passionate about health and well-being.
Yes, I am. I really am. I'm really getting into it lately for sure. It's like my second career now. So
So
moving
exciting.
forward. Yeah, it is. It is. I really love it. There's a lot of information. And that's another thing, right? There's a lot of information and a lot of things to know. And it's not everything is for everybody and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But let's talk about you and let's talk about your passion for this and let's talk about how it started, right? Because this is all about you, you're the people and your passion and your purpose, how it came about, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So I struggled a little bit with, well, not a little bit. I struggled with health growing up. I had IBS, which is pretty common, irritable bowel syndrome, a gut condition, and I helped myself. I really helped heal myself through a holistic model, which I didn't know at that time, which is, what exactly I was doing, but I shifted my eating pattern. I integrated more movement that felt good for me. I focused a lot on my stress management in different ways. And through quite a few years, I really was free from IBS, which was incredible. And so I thought to myself, wow, I'd really love to be able to help others on their health journey. Um, and that
Wow.
was kind of a spark for me in terms of like getting into this work. I also had a natural fascination with food and cooking from a very early age. I wanted to know where food came from, how it was grown, how to prepare my own meals, which I started doing at age 15 when I became plant-based as a plant-based eater. And yeah, so that's kind of a little bit how it began.
Yeah.
I traveled a lot in my early 20s, and I moved to Thailand, actually the north of Thailand, for a period of time. And after I studied holistic nutrition, which is I studied in two different schools, I decided to get my feet wet and work with some of the not locals, unfortunately, because I didn't speak Thai, but a lot of the people who were there, expats and travelers who were really into yoga and eating well and all of like well-being. And so I started to practice there. And that's kind of how I started in terms of being a practitioner. I was excited to kind of explore that in a place that was foreign, and I kind of didn't feel the pressure of working with people in my own city of Montreal where I would maybe know people, and it was so new to me wearing this hat of embodying this role of practitioner that it was fun to do it in Thailand. So yeah.
Wow. There's a lot to unload here. So
Yeah, a lot.
I didn't know all this when we spoke, but hang on a second. So basically what you're saying is that so you were really young when you started to get into food and stuff like that.
It was, yeah.
So, but back it up a bit to when you said a few minutes ago that you had IBS and you
Yes.
learned how to heal yourself, but you must have looked for information or looked, you know.
Absolutely. At the time it wasn't the internet. It was more going to libraries and reading about
Right.
nutrition, reading about the mind-body connection, like really like a bit out there stuff, as well as like psychology and the impact of stress on the body and lots of different things I explored. I went to I explored the conventional approach, went to my doctor, and unfortunately there wasn't too much they could really offer with IBS. That's kind of typical. It's hard to treat. So certainly I explored a lot, but it was also trial and error. Like I experimented with different foods and different things. It was really an organic process. And again, I wasn't really conscious of like what I was doing. I was just really trying to help myself. Yeah, so it's a bit vague, but like it was a lot of learning, and then also just again like experiential learning through my trying different things.
Right.
Yeah.
And like when you knew that you weren't well and you didn't feel well, what were some of the symptoms or the things that you were feeling? Just so,
Yes.
people can
Yeah.
listen to that.
Sure, sure. So honestly, like almost every time I would eat a meal, I would have extreme pain, like in my gut. I would have cramping, and I would have to I was in and out of the bathroom all the time. I had bloating. It was really like it negatively impacted my quality of life in a significant way. Often in the evenings were the worst times. So I would eat a dinner and then just be struggling after I would eat. And I ate growing up a fairly normal, like conventional North American diet, still like on the healthier side. My mom always cooked with whole foods, for the most part. There was veggies and all of that, but it was more animal product centered. And I just learned that like I couldn't really personally tolerate a lot of those foods. And when I kind of started to remove them and replace them with more plant sources of proteins and things like that, I was felt a lot better. Like such a significant change, positive change happened when I shifted my diet towards more plants.
Right. That's
Yeah.
really interesting because you know, it's so IBS is so common, and I just spoke to somebody who had IBS and well, SIBO actually.
Okay.
So and we went through her journey. But like like plant-based diet isn't for everybody, and it doesn't mean that if you have IBS, you should be on a plant-based diet.
Absolutely. Thank you
Right.
for that. Thank you for
Yes.
saying.
It's just, and what's so interesting to me is how well, there's two things. Number one, the fact that you were like called to eating a more plant-based diet, like, and the fact that you were called to the library to study all this stuff, and the fact that you were able to heal yourself in that way, that's like the your stomach issues or your gut issues is a curse, but at the same time, it was a gift because your curiosity allowed you to heal yourself,
Absolutely, absolutely. And I
right?
should say that it's important to seek professional guidance and help. And I'm not encouraging everyone to like do this on their own, certainly at all, at all, at all. This was just happened to be my journey at the time.
Right.
Uh, and also, you're speaking just before, you're speaking to something I call bio-individuality, which is that every body is really unique and different in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
so, again, plant-based does not work for everyone. And actually, right now in my life, I call it plant forward, which means that I do eat some animal products. I don't eat meat, but I do eat some animal products, and I'm tolerating it quite well at this stage of my life. And so, also, our needs shift throughout our lives during, depending on certain circumstances and that kind of thing. So it's good to just be open to thinking about, like, if you go see a dietitian or you go see a professional, like what just to be thinking in terms of like what is working for me, what would be best for me at this stage of my life.
Right. But I do want to bring you back at 100%. And I do want to bring you back to, yes, you should seek help from a professional, and you are a professional. But at the same time, you did always have that inclination to be curious about it. And like other people might just like not feel well, go to a doctor or go to a holistic health practitioner and get the help, but continue to do whatever it is that they do in their life. For you,
Sure.
it's all encompassing. And that I feel probably also gives, because you have the tendency towards IBS and because you've had to get to know your body so well, it does give you the advantage of being able to work with people. And the fact that you're open and you understand that everybody's has a different body, and it gives you the insight to know
Yeah.
what to ask people to get to the bottom of it, right?
Yes, absolutely. And like you were saying, it's a gift, it's a curse and a gift. I do see it that way as well.
Yeah.
And having my own experience, again, I meet people where they're at, really. And so I don't project my experience on other people. I'm very mindful of that. But at the same time, as you were just saying, because I've gone through my own health journey and it's ongoing, we all have health stuff in our lives. I'm very grateful to be in a healthy place right now, but life is always presenting different challenges and in terms of mental and physical well-being. But I do feel like I have if anything, it's the compassion part of having struggled and experienced a lot of pain that like I feel like I can relate to others, and hopefully people feel this, but just in a more compassionate way. And that I think is healing in itself.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And like what has working, I understand where your passion comes from now, but
Yeah.
what has like working as a practitioner, what has that impact had on your life?
It's really, I mean, the first thing I want to say is it really keeps me in check because I really try to practice what I preach. Not that I preach, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And whenever I meet with somebody, I explain, self-care and like how to take care of ourselves and nourish ourselves in different ways. It really, like, as a practitioner, I'm just always reminded, like, I say, like, my clients teach me and I learn so much from them because it just keeps me aware of like, oh, you know what, I need to go for my morning walk, which I'm actually pretty diligent about. But like, as an example, like, I need to practice my breath work and all of these things that help me to manage my stress. And so being a practitioner, it does it. It keeps me
Right.
conscious of my own patterns.
Right.
But also, it's so deeply gratifying and meaningful to me when I can work and join people on their health journey and well-being journey, and offer any guidance and support that I can. I feel like it's nourishing, to use that word again. For
Yeah.
me, I feel like I have passion around it and purpose around it, and that is something I'm like, yeah, very, very thankful for. It just like it's I'm so energized by it to be
Hmm.
able. It really gives me so much energy, and I'm like, I'm off, after I have a session with someone and like a really great session. It's just like I want to just keep doing it all the time.
And
Yeah.
and has there ever been like a struggle with a client? And when you do have that struggle with a client, like where do you go inside of you for the strength to be able to continue with that person? Or what, what keeps you going and what keeps you passionate, even if you're having a problem, you
Yeah,
know?
that's a wonderful question. So, I mean, I think one way I've kind of helped to prevent this from happening, which I'm about to explain, is by having discovery calls, which is that like I found that any challenge really happens from working with someone who we're just not the right fit. Like maybe they have a different set of values and vision for what health means to them, and that's absolutely fine. But they're not on the holistic train that I'm on, let's say, where I see things from a certain perspective. And not that I'm rigid about that, but that's just what I offer. I offer holistic health.
Mhm.
So the challenge was just in working with someone who just had a very different way of perceiving health and well-being, and so we weren't the right match essentially. And so I talk openly about that with the person, and we kind of decide what we should do next, and
Mhm.
how we could work together or not. But essentially, that's kind of one challenge that has arisen. Another one is that a person is just not really ready to prioritize, or they don't prioritize their well-being for whatever reason. And again, there's no judgment around this. It's
Mhm.
just that it takes time and energy to feed ourselves well, to move, to do all these things that support our health. And so something that's common is like, I don't have time, like I just don't have time for this. And what I hear when I hear that is it's just not really a priority for me at this point. And again, no judgment whatsoever, but I just try and explain like this will take some work. And
Mhm.
if they're not ready for that, that's absolutely okay. Maybe at another stage of their life, they'll feel like they're ready.
Mhm.
But that has been a challenge, and it doesn't really get me down. I understand that that's a reality for a lot of people, and I think that there is something to personal readiness, like essentially like someone saying, okay, right now in my life, I think this is appropriate time to
Mhm.
take more time to focus on my well-being. And so that's kind of another challenge I say that I have encountered.
Well, you went through it yourself, so you know that it takes time
Ah,
and you know that you have to be patient and
yes.
and you also put yourself in an environment that was inclusive to that. So when you said that you went to practice that type of lifestyle, that holistic lifestyle, meaning, okay, holistic lifestyle, meaning like nutrition, movement, mindset, you mentioned breath work, like taking all those, I mean, I'm exploring a lot of that stuff. So taking all those things brings you to be a more holistic person. You get to know yourself better,
Yeah,
you see yourself better somehow, and
absolutely.
you go through a lot of internal movement and growth,
Yes. 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 Absolutely. I love that. I love that.
right?
Yes, yes. It's really like to me, holism is about like it's a simple way to say it, but it's the whole person, the
Mhm.
whole picture of a person and all the interconnected aspects of their well-being and health.
Mhm.
So we know that, for example, if we have high levels of stress, maybe even like chronic stress, this is going to affect the body. There's the mind-body connection, which we honor and acknowledge in holistic health. And so this is to me what I mean when I say like holism and holistic is like the interconnection between these different aspects of ourselves and our lives. That's
Yes.
kind of,
And so your tribe in Thailand that you worked
oh
with,
yeah, yeah,
so you were more comfortable working there
yeah.
first,
At the
right?
beginning, exactly. At the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, um, you know, I guess you could talk about that a little bit because, like, why were you more comfortable there? What brought you there than being here, in Montreal, here meaning Montreal, for those of you who are
Right. Yes.
might not be in Montreal or where you're from. So, what was that like for you and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah.
Because this is also people like not just with IBS or gut issues listening, it's everybody. So I'm sure that there are other people who are listening who are also on a path of something that is new to them or experiential. So can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Sure. I was a traveler like in my 20s. I wanted to explore, see the world, have different experiences, be in very different cultures. That was kind of like a part of my natural curiosity, which we talked about at the very beginning. So
Mm.
I wanted to leave Montreal winter for a bit. And Thailand was a pretty affordable, especially then years ago, place. And I was just called to a particular part of Thailand called Chiang Mai, which is just like there's a lot of, again, like health and wellness culture there
Mhm.
among people who have either moved there and set up like a yoga studio or like some kind of thing like that, or people who are just visiting. And there's like a lot of plant-based cafes and restaurants. It's Buddhist there, and so the Buddhism impacts that sort of access to more vegetarian type of food and cuisine. So that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to go there specifically. I had gone there previously on a backpacking trip, and I
Mhm.
said, "Oh wow, like I want to come back here and like live here for a bit, experience of living there." And so again, I had recently graduated, and I just sort of said like, you know what? I want to again like explore being an entrepreneur. So I biked around this town and I put up posters because again there was no like real like advertising like on Instagram there at the time. So I
Yeah.
put up posters all over these yoga studios and cafes and the streets, and I just got some calls. Like people would call me and or email me and just sort of say like, oh, I'm curious to learn more about this like whole food, plant forward kind of approach that you
Mm.
have. And maybe they had just been in India and they had like some kind of gut issue, they had been sick or something, and they wanted to explore like how to nourish themselves in a different way that might be supportive. And so, yeah, it wasn't that I didn't want to practice in Montreal. I did. I just wanted to have this other experience first to kind of again get my feet wet and kind of um it was just such a like supportive kind of environment for this kind of practice that I
Yes.
felt like more at ease there. And like, you know, the holism and natural or more complementary modalities of health have become more popular in Quebec, like
Yes.
over the past, 10, 20 years. Before when had just graduated, especially like a plant forward approach to eating was really uncommon. Like there was not a huge amount of vegetarian restaurants or any of that in the city. So I didn't really feel like there was like a huge market for that here yet. And so it's been wonderful to see a shift in Montreal of like much more interest and openness towards this style of living, actually.
I think also it's really cool that like you found this place, Chiang Mai, right? You found this place and you were comfortable there. You felt like this was your place, and you
Absolutely.
actually allowed yourself, to stay there and experience that. I mean, that in itself it's courageous, it's self-care, it's knowing yourself, and that comes from being in this sort of let's call it a journey. I don't like, overused word, but
Yeah,
that sort of journey of learning of what's good for you.
absolutely. Well said. Yeah, thank you for reflecting that back to me. Yeah.
Right? And so it sounds to me like you are really like living in alignment, like with what you believe and what you feel is right.
Yes, and also learning, like traveling, living abroad in a very different culture. I also
Yeah.
taught English as a second language while I was there, so I worked with locals.
Wow.
Um, and so that's just an ongoing learning path that I feel like I really, again, it wasn't a conscious decision. It's just kind of like that's what I gravitated toward. And I think that I did. I learned so much. I mean, I continue to learn so much every day, but like I just learned so much at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. And so now that how long have you been working in this field in Montreal?
2012.
Oh, so yeah, like 12 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's quite a long time. And so what are what are people talking to you about, and where do you think it's all coming from?
Hmm. But coming from what in terms of like their health
Like
concerns or
themes, like are there major
yeah.
themes that you keep seeing popping up, and why do you think they're happening, you know?
Oh, right. Yeah, it's a wonderful question. Yeah, that's a great question. So, two or three main themes, I would say one is energy levels. So, people just really experiencing like low energy. They have because I have a rating system that I ask people to like keep a journal and actually rate their energy levels throughout the day in reference to what they eat, in reference to their movement, their sleep, their stress level, which is really key when it comes to energy levels. And so people come to like, I'm just like, I don't have energy. Like I feel very low energy, or my energy is like up and down, like more than like normal, let's say, quote unquote. The other one is like, again, gut discomfort, gut health. They want to support their gut health through nourishment and primarily through nourishment. And another one is, which is a bit like maybe unlikely, is I call it organization in their life, but it's really creating some structure in their life around their self-care, around their health and well-being, because people have just stopped prioritizing themselves. I typically work with women. And so, I think mothers typically, it's very often they put so much of their energy into taking their care of their kids, their families, and also and women in general. I think we're like conditioned a little bit in our culture to like really give and take care of others, which is beautiful, but we forget sometimes to take care of ourselves. And so people come for like, how can I want to like reset and like kind of restructure my life and get some organizational tips around how to like feed myself regularly every day, meals and snacks, go for my, include some movement into my life, manage my stress and my sleep a bit better. So all
Mm.
of that. And where it comes from, I mean, I'm not certain. I really couldn't tell you for sure, but I do think that um, we're just living like busy lives these days in our culture. We're nonstop. There's pressure, there's stress, there's anxiety that's on the rise. All of these things, I think, is just impacting our physiology. Like we're physically feeling more tired. We're feeling, all
Yeah.
of that. All of that is impacting our well-being. And so I think it's kind of like on a cultural level, an interesting thing to look at, like how we're living as a society and how this is impacting us. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And
Yeah.
it's true. And so I guess I also wanted to know with that, it's trending. So I'm just looking at some of the questions that I was asking you
Sure,
because
sure. Yeah.
yeah, like I wanted to know like what has surprised you most about yourself that you've learned over the years?
Yeah, I think my approach to nourishment has really, really changed over the years. I used to be much more, let's say, conventional with like, okay, you need to eat in this certain way, and this sort of eating pattern is appropriate, and like these certain eating times. And I had like more of a formula, more rigidity, and more structure, like a narrow structure around my approach to nourishment. And
Mhm.
now I'm not an intuitive eater, like advocate necessarily, like specifically, but I do have a more intuitive approach. It's more flexible. Like the word flexibility, I use that word intentionally because I think it's like opposed to rigidity, like
Mhm.
being flexible with ourselves around like what do I want to eat today, or like in this meal, like what would feel good for me mentally and physically, like what would give me energy, but also be delicious, but also I feel well after eating this.
Mhm.
So kind of tuning into that stuff and having that more of that approach versus like a very cerebral, like intellectual, like this is how one eats. This is like the best way to eat. Like I have a very different approach. Like I don't have that mindset anymore
Right.
whatsoever.
So you're kind of surprised about that.
I'm surprised about that. Yeah, yeah.
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 And I guess it came through just living and learning and
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
feeding myself, also learning about like different approaches. I learned actually, I did research a lot about intuitive eating and just other approaches to eating
Mhm.
um and all of that was very interesting to me. And it informed the way that I work with people as a holistic health practitioner for sure. Like I just I realized that there's this sort of with rigidity, I think comes like a you could say maybe more of like a disordered eating possibility. Like people, there's a possibility for people to be a little bit more on like really concerned about what they eat and stressed about what they eat and all of that. And I think with flexibility and like enjoying meals and being more relaxed around food, one's pattern is a little bit more balanced, let's say.
And you're speaking for yourself as well. Like you
For
keep
myself, yes, myself, but also like just all the people that I work with and have worked with. Like I've noticed this pattern, and also again, and also reading about other cases and people who've been done doing this work for a long time. They know, like I've also learned a lot through that. Yeah.
and what like after suffering and after after learning about all this and after through life changing and things like that, what would you say like you are so happy about right now in your life? Like what are you so grateful for? What are you so happy about? What makes you happy? um
Oh, well, one other piece of well-being as like something that I think like physicians should even like prescribe is like being in nature, being outside in green spaces, breathing fresh air, like moving our bodies in nature. It's such a human thing. Like it's so basic and seems so simplistic, but I think sometimes the basic simple things are like the wisest,
yeah.
sometimes. And I just feel like what's been so deeply nourishing for me over the years, and I really try and make time as much as I can throughout the week, is just to be out again around trees, around nature, in the quiet, like a more quiet, less busy, hectic environment. It's like our nervous system relaxes, our whole being feels nourished. Like it's just like I'm sensitive to that,
Yeah.
maybe more most people, but like I think it helps everyone feel well. Like no one I think would ever say like, oh, I don't feel better after going for a long walk in nature. Like everyone feels a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I feel like that makes me very, very, very happy, or
Yeah.
not the word happy, but like just contented and
Yeah.
relaxed and calm.
Mhm.
Um, More calm than I normally am. Not that I'm like a non-calm person, but like it just makes me feel so soothed. Um,
Mhm.
so that's something that I think really makes me happy.
Mhm.
Connecting. I think there's so much more research these days about how like the importance of connecting meaningfully with others, individually or with the community, is
Mhm.
important. I really try and make time to connect with my friends, with my family, with just even people I encounter, like going to the grocery store, like, hi, how are you, to the like cashier, and just like a small, tiny little moment of connection. I think these
Mhm.
things make me really feel joyful and
Mhm.
well.
Nice. Yeah. It's the little things.
Yeah, totally.
For
Yeah.
sure. And so, you know, now you've been doing this for quite a while. Is there anything that you think about, that you want to add to your practice or to your life, or you want to do something different, or, what have you been thinking about lately?
Yeah. So two things come to mind. One is I'd like to get more formal education around mindfulness. I've been learning about mindfulness since I was like a teenager, like just for myself, to help myself. But I think that again, in terms of like research, there's so much more research pointing to how effective mindfulness practice can be for stress management, which is something I talk about with my clients. And So I'd really like to explore that more deeply. And I kept like kind of researching like, oh, what this program and that program or this certificate and that certificate. And I haven't found really the one that resonates most, but I do want to kind of solidify like what I'm going to do
Hmm.
next in terms of that and that area. Also, I'm really curious to learn more about neurodivergence and how that impacts people's patterns of eating and living. And for example, people who have ADHD, like that can impact the way that they experience like planning or organizing their life around cooking and things like that.
Mm.
Timing a meal, like all those things can be different for those folks. And so I'm really curious to kind of be able to hopefully be more helpful for people who are neurodivergent in my work. And so I'd like to explore that further. Yeah.
Well, interesting. I think also it's like what we're eating is affecting us in those ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
So,
Totally. I think it's
yeah.
early days to like know in terms of research. It's hard to know, but there's no way that like, there's no separation between like all of
No.
these things, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's so interesting. Wow. And so, if there's one last thing that you want to leave everybody, something that gets you out of bed in the morning, or what do you do when you're having a rough day, or, like, so you talked about being in nature and stuff like that, but is there, you know, a, a,
Yes.
a sentence that comes into your mind, or what do you do for yourself?
Yes. Wonderful question. I love that so much. And I'm excited to talk about this because I'm very passionate about it.
Okay, good.
It's actually self-compassion. And I really think it's a very powerful tool that and practice that we can do, we can use. I use it for myself all the time, and I think it's been incredibly effective on days that I'm having a hard time. We all go through difficult moments in life, and I think meeting ourselves in this self-compassionate way is so helpful. And I use it in my work a lot. If people have a difficult day or week and they're like discouraged and having like lots of negative self-talk around like,
Yeah.
oh, I messed up, or I made this mistake, and they just go into this downward spiral. I feel like self-compassion is really kind of saying like being gentle with ourselves and being saying it's okay, like talking to ourselves as if we're a small child. Like we're not going to berate a small child.
So you do that. You say to
I do
yourself,
that a lot. Yeah.
no, it's
Yeah.
okay.
It's
I made a
okay.
mistake, but it's going to be okay.
I'm human. It's going to be okay. And everyone struggles sometimes. Everyone makes mistakes. You're just human. And let's just like be gentle around it and not so like,
And do you
yeah,
talk it out loud?
honor,
Do you tell yourself out loud, or do you say it inside
inner,
your
I say to myself, and it's really a practice. Like I just want to emphasize that because I think, um, it just takes time to like have that be our default where, we might get upset and that's normal to kind of like start to get upset with ourselves and discouraged and disappointed, and so it's just normal. It's just normal to go there sometimes. I mean, depends on the person. Some people don't have a loud inner critic, but if you have a loud inner critic, it's
Mhm.
helpful to just practice this kind of, and whatever words or sentence resonates most for you, we can explore that like an individual, you or whoever is listening, like explore like what words resonate most for me. Like for me, gentleness
For
resonates.
you. Yeah, for you. Let's talk about you.
Yeah, that's it. So for me, it's the gentle part that really resonates. And so that to me, when I hear that, I just mean being like softer and like really like understanding. So it's like, oh, I understand, like you struggled, you had this happen and that happened, or you had a difficult week. So it's natural, and like just trying to extend understanding rather than judgment. Being non-judgmental is a really big part of like being compassionate. And so
Mhm.
I think that's something that really helps me in a really big way. Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Oh, yeah.
Eat
Thanks.
well and you eat at the right time for you and you eat what's good for you.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah,
Love
totally.
it. I love it. So
Oh, great.
you're walking the talk, right?
Doing
You're
my
talking
best.
the walk. You're doing your best. Yeah.
Yeah,
Leading
absolutely.
by example.
Trying, yeah, and really mindful to do that, really mindful, like every day. And that's it. It's a day-to-day practice, like we meet ourselves where we're at and like, what's the best I can do today? And
Right.
sometimes that's going to be different, we'll be able to do more than another day. And again, self-compassion, like that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh,
Great. So
great.
I'm gonna put your Instagram handle in the description. So if people want to reach out to you, and if you want to comment on either the Spotify or the YouTube, if you want
Sure.
to say hi to people, and I would love for people to, either ask questions or let us know how you felt about this interview. It'd be great. We are definitely going to have more discussions and conversations, right? So
Yes, I'm excited.
maybe on a different platform, but we're going to definitely work on something. And I really, really appreciated this talk with you. And I'm glad everyone got to know you a little bit better. And it's always interesting to see like, where people start and how, how they evolve and where it all goes, and how this really became a purpose in your life because it was so important to you. So
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this, and you have such a warm energy. It's so like,
good.
even though it's virtual, it's like I feel like your presence. So I'm
Oh,
grateful for that.
oh,
Yeah.
that's great. So thank you so much. And everybody out there, thank you for listening to another episode of People, Their Passion and Purpose. Can't wait to see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.